President Vladimir Putin has recognized two separatist regions in Ukraine as independent states, further fueling fears of an invasion. The move paves the way for Moscow to provide them with military support. The U.S., UK, European Union, and NATO are among those condemning Putin's decision. The Biden administration is planning to impose sanctions on the two regions as a result. For more, I want to bring in William Taylor. He is the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Mr. Ambassador, thanks very much for joining us. What is significant about President Putin recognizing these separatist regions in Ukraine?
Elaine, the significance is President Putin is destroying the whole system by which nations have dealt with each other since the end of World War II. He is essentially about to, and maybe has, sent his Russian military into a neighboring country. Again, let's remember that he invaded Ukraine in 2014. He's about to do it again, and with this recognition of these two puppet statelets, he is trampling on the sovereignty of Ukraine. He is saying that Ukraine is not a sovereign nation, and it doesn't deserve the respect and the rights of a sovereign nation. And he's going to send military troops into these little statelets, these little puppet statelets. So that will destroy all of the understandings, principles, treaties, guidelines of how nations have dealt with each other since World War II.
Well, the threat of a full-scale invasion seems to grow each day. Mr. Ambassador, what could a potential invasion look like? And how does this recent sort of declaration by President Putin factor into that?
It factors directly into that, Elaine. So President Putin is sending in Russian military. Regular Russian military units are going to go in from Russia into Ukraine's territory, onto the territory of these two little puppet statelets. Russian forces will then be face to face with Ukrainian forces. And what we know is that the Russian forces are going to try to trigger a provocation. They are going to dress up like Ukrainian soldiers. You'll be Russians in Ukrainian uniforms, and these Russians in Ukrainian uniforms will attack the Russian soldiers who are in Donbass, in these little puppet statelets. And then the Russians will say, President Putin will say, see, those Ukrainians are attacking my forces, so I have to attack them. I have to invade. So this decision today and this movement today of Russian forces into Donbass sets up that false flag, that mistake that they're going to make. And that will give them the rationale, that will try to give them the rationale to invade. So that's the big problem we're facing here today.
Where does that leave the U.S.? President Biden has said he would not deploy any U.S. forces into Ukraine in the event of an invasion. How prepared is Ukraine to handle a Russian attack on its own? And do you think the U.S. has done enough to support the country?
So President Biden has been very clear. If President Putin sends one tank, one soldier, one airplane, one missile across the internationally recognized border, which President Putin is now doing, President Putin is now invading Ukraine. Let's be clear. And President Biden has said, if that happens, then the full force of these sanctions that we've been talking about for 3 months and preparing with the Europeans for 3 months are ready to go into effect. They should go into effect right away. That's number one. Number two, you asked about the Ukrainian military. It is tough. The Ukrainian military is tough. It's been fighting the Russians and the Russian-led forces in Donbass for 8 years. They know how to fight. And they've now got the equipment and they've got the training. They've got high morale. They're defending their own country, and they're going to fight fiercely, Elaine. They're going to make it very difficult for the Russians to come into their country. The Russians have a very big military, there's no doubt, and it's bigger than the Ukrainian, there's no doubt. But it will be very painful for President Putin to have these Russian soldiers die in Donbass and die in Ukraine and go back to Russian cities and towns and villages where parents, Russian parents, are going to ask President Putin, why are we attacking the Ukrainians that are our brothers? That, we have nothing against you. Most Russians, Elaine, have nothing against the Ukrainians. And so they're going to be asking, why are their sons and daughters and brothers and fathers coming back dead? This is going to be a major problem for President Putin, which he's going to have to face if he does this step.
So U.S. officials say that they are still open to a peaceful solution to this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. But realistically, Mr. Ambassador, is this window for diplomacy fast closing?
Fast closing, Elaine, fast closing. Once the Russian troops invade Ukraine, which may be happening right now as we speak, those Russian troops may be coming across the border from Russia into Ukraine, into Donbass right now. That means diplomacy's done.
And at that point, you mentioned President Putin and just his own sort of domestic potential kind of issues. What would be in this for President Putin to go ahead and move forward with an invasion that is a large-scale invasion?
Elaine, you're exactly right. No one can answer that question. Why is he doing this? What he says is that he wants to control Ukraine. He wants to dominate Ukraine. He doesn't think Ukraine's a real country. It's not a real nation. It's not sovereign. So he wants to dominate it somehow. And that is what he says is the reason for his invasion. So for that, he's going to have many of his soldiers die. He's going to kill tens of thousands of Ukrainian military and civilians so that he can be seen to be a Russian hero. Elaine, this makes no sense. He will not get away with this.
Meantime, other countries, of course, are watching closely to see how the U.S. and the West respond in this moment. Ambassador William Taylor, always good to have your insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine.